Hello everyone, today we are checking out Legatus 505 by Fulgur Ovid. Now a couple of you have recommended this to me, so without further ado, let's just get right into things. I'm really excited to check this one out. So let's go ahead and start in 3, 2, 1, play. Okay. Ooh, we got...
Come in. Do you read me?
Very experimental. Oh.
I rise, I fall, back to the ground. I lied, complied, and yet still decay. I fight, I thrive, by killing myself. Somehow survive another day. Should I measure the time I have? Should I ever dream my own dream? Should I ever become myself? Have a mouth but no scream.
Alright, already we're getting into these pretty experimental tones with the synth on the keyboard, and the vocals here have quite an interesting digital effect on them. We've got some vocal layering as well, but the song seems to be a lot more focused on his character lore, like as a VTuber character. And I to be honest, I'm not too familiar with his lore or all the lore of all the NIJISANJI characters, but I'm quite impressed by his acceptance of the lore and focus on it, because I feel like a lot of NIJISANJI, not just NIJISANJI, VTubers in general, I feel like a lot of VTubers in general have a habit of kind of getting into their lore at the very beginning, and then as they become more familiar with their audience and they just want to do their own thing, the lore kind of gets thrown away over time. But I think it's really nice to see it referenced in these original songs and these projects that they do, and especially in fan content as well. I think the lore gives a lot of opportunity for fans to make stuff and create little projects as well. So I think it's really cool to see the lore being utilized for an original song like this, and it's very very dark as well. That was a nice... I have to say the EQ work on the vocal track is very interesting. I believe it's sort of being mixed in a way to be reminiscent of like an 80s reel, especially as we saw in the beginning, at the very beginning, with that cassette. I believe that was a cassette, I'm not too sure. But it's sort of referencing that old-timey feel with the EQ work here, being very faded, very compressed, sort of suppressed as well. And I'm very interested in that comparison, because I do know that Fulgur is supposed to be like a futuristic, like cyborg character. So I'm interested in why we're so focused on the past, or at least references to like the past in the mix. There's some nice lyricism here. I'm liking the lyricism, but I have to admit it's not the most, like, you know, star striking vocals here, but I do like sort of how he's adding that sing-songiness to it, and he's very much playing towards the atmosphere that the mix and the visuals are portraying. He's matching that aesthetic very well, and so even if I'm not like blown away by his vocal ability, like it's still a very good cognizance of where he is in the mix. And that's very important for any vocalist. And this is a nice little credits breakdown here. Huh. He sounds a lot better here. The entire mix here is more bass centric, and you can hear that in the way that the vocal track is mixed now with the EQ. It's allowing for more of that bass tone to come through, and his voice sounds so much nicer with more of that bass. It almost feels like we weren't really like hearing enough of where his voice was in the earlier part, because now that we're getting more of that bass tone, his voice sounds so much more complete. And we're getting also this very interesting backing percussive that's very bass focused, but we're also getting some treble clicks in there as well. And we're getting this where I believe these are his gen mates that we're seeing as visuals, and we're seeing some introspective lines accompanied by vocal layering. So I'm assuming the vocal layering is sort of a reference to the external help he receives, but we're getting these interjected black screens, which are kind of allowing us to get more of like a contrast between the outside world and what's in his head. Again, referencing time. I think he sounds almost like out of breath, but I don't think that's because of him. I think it's just the mix is cutting him short. It's like what it sounds like to me is that in the EQ or in the mix, they're cutting and fading him out a little earlier than the line really ends, like the bar really ends. And so I'm not sure if that's intentional. I think it probably is intentional, though it does sound a little off to me. But I think that might be the point. The point might be to sort of put you on that edge, sort of put you in that uncomfortable state to kind of emulate what's going on in his introspection here.
With 4 different color lights.
Interesting. That was a very big demeanor change there. A big bass cutout there. We got a bit of an impact effect to cut out the bass, and now we're getting a very treble-centric mix here.
My black world with 4 different color lights. Like to red in the past. But suddenly I saw the lights that lit up my black world with 4 different color lights.
Yeah, I believe those 4 colored lights are his gen mates, if I'm not mistaken. Those are supposed to be the other members of Anoctix. The song seems to be much more a love letter to the other members of Anoctix, as well as sort of like a characterization of who Fulgur Ovid is as an intellectual property, as his background and as person. Though this could be an introspection of the person behind Fulgur Ovid, sort of just talking about his struggle coming to NIJISANJI and how he's gotten to meet his gen mates here. I don't know if I should read too much into it, or perhaps it's more open-ended than that, and perhaps it's your choice whether to take it one way or the other. But I think this is a very sweet song ultimately, which I feel like almost contributes to that effect we've been getting of almost like a cassette or an aged record, where it's very faded, very suppressed in the vocal EQ. And I think that's sort of a reference to how he's feeling before he's meeting these members of Noctis, where he was as a mental state before getting to know these other people. And if I'm correct about that, then this is a very, very sweet song. And even if I'm wrong about that, I think it doesn't take away from the love letter this song is.
I try to grab them with my hands, even though those colors fade to gray in the past. Open my gray eyes so to see this world in which I'm truly alive. Survive, I survive, but inside I ask myself now, can I thrive? Gave up my heart, but now I'm saved by these reflections of my own crime. I killed the weak parts I possess, but can I protect them this time?
Did you read me?
Interesting. All right. Well, that was Legatus 505. I have to say, this might be the most unique song I've checked out on this channel. This song was it wasn't like it had a crazy like dynamic segmentation. It didn't have like ridiculous parts of the mix or anything, but it was a very simple, emotional, unique mix. I feel like at first, I have to admit, when I heard the vocals, I was like, okay, like I didn't really quite latch on to them. I wasn't like a massive fan of the vocals, but as it went on, I felt like it fit the aesthetic more and more as the lyrics were presented, because it felt like this was obviously from the perspective of someone in pain, very introspective, very reflecting on the past, and then hopeful for the future, very afraid. It was someone who was very scared. And I think the vocal mixing and the equalization we got for the vocal tracks, it fit that very well. I think perhaps once I listen to this again, I'll probably give this another listen off camera. I think I'll probably notice those vocals will probably fit the lyrics more and more the more I listen to it. So I'm quite a big fan of this. This was a very unique song, and I quite like how Fulgur here is not only playing with his lore, but also, speaking to his gen mates, speaking to himself, and presenting this to his fans. And that was a really sweet original song. I really liked that. So thank you very much for recommending this to me. As always, feel free to recommend more in the comment section below. Aside from that, I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.